If you think HMRC won't take action against your company if you owe them money, you need to think again. They are ramping up their enforcement efforts, and the Control of Goods Act gives them power to seize your business assets quicker than ever before. Right now, thousands of UK businesses are being hit with notices of enforcement, and if you don't understand them, you could wake up to enforcement agents at your business ready to take company vehicles, stock and all the equipment. If you don't act fast when you owe HMRC money, they could start enforcement. You could lose all your assets and your business. It's only this week I had a call from a restaurant. They wanted to do a pre-pack. The problem was HMRC had already taken control of the goods, and even though the goods were still in the business premises, his business was over. In this video, I am going to break down exactly how the Control of Goods Act works, how HMRC is using it to collect debts, and what you must do if enforcement agents come knocking on your door. So stay with me to the end, because it could be the difference between saving your business and losing everything. Hello, it's Chris Worden from Director First, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a crucial topic that is affecting more and more businesses, the Control of Goods Act. We're going to break down what it is, how HMRC is using it, and what you need to know to protect your business. Listen, let's get started. First of all, let's clarify what the Control of Goods Act entails. Officially known as the Taking Control of Goods Regulation 2013, this legislation outlines the procedures enforcement agents must follow when seizing goods to recover debts. It's part of the Tribunals, Courts and Enforcement Act 2007, and it replaced the old distress process with a new, more standardised approach. Now, the key purpose here, right, it provides a clear framework for enforcement agents, and the framework is around them seizing and selling goods from companies to satisfy unpaid debts. And it applies to various debts, including those that lots of businesses I speak to owe, like HMRC VAT, corporation tax, PAYE, a combination of all three, local authorities, business rates, and even private creditors are using it now. Now, the process, an enforcement agent must follow specific steps, including providing notice, and they've got to adhere to prescribed conduct standards. Now, what prompted this video is HMRC. Now, recently HMRC have been really leveraging these regulations more frequently to recover outstanding tax. Now, the shift aims to enhance efficiency in debt collection and ensure compliance, because let's face it, the revenue have been at the bottom of the pile for some time with businesses who can't pay the debts. Now, the reason that this has been brought in, now it's a standardised process, and it's going to allow HMRC to go quicker at recovering debts. Now, the deterrent really is to, the more and more businesses find out about this, obviously, hopefully it's going to frighten them into paying HMRC in time. And what it does, for me, it demonstrates HMRC's commitment to enforcing tax compliance. Like, literally, the gloves are off, if you ask me right now. They're trying to get money in for the public funds, for the public first, and I'm seeing it every week. Like, in the past, it was like, you know, every now and again. It's becoming much more prevalent. And the way that, what normally happens is someone rings, Chris, blah, 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 we've got these problems, etc., etc. We owe HMRC. Right, what assets have you got in your business? Okay, we've got tables, chairs, plant, machinery. What process are you at with HMRC? And they say, well, someone's been in with a clipboard and we've had to sign for stuff. And what that is they've taken control of goods. I mean, let's break down the process. So HMRC follow this process. Let's talk about like a notice of enforcement. What they'll do, if you're behind on your taxes, they can issue a notice to you, and it provides basically 7 days before they start taking action. Now, Before that, you don't just get behind on a VAT payment and the next thing is they're giving you this notice. It's when the phone calls haven't worked, the letters haven't worked, and you might have had your local HMRC on the doorstep knocking. None of that's worked. You've buried your head in the sand. The next stage is they're going to start taking action and they're going to serve you with this notice. Then you're going to get visited by an enforcement agent. Now, if the debt remains unpaid, the enforcement agent will come, they'll knock on the business's premises, or it might even be your personal home. If your registered address is your house, they'll be coming knocking at your house. Now, once they come back, they're going to be identifying goods for potential seizure. And that's what they're looking to do now, a controlled goods agreement. Now, you could enter into a controlled goods agreement, acknowledging essentially that the goods that they've specified on this agreement are bound against the debt. Now, once you've signed it, you're agreeing that you can't dispose of those goods. So if I tell you about this restaurant the other day, they had kitchen equipment, fryers, hobs, fridges, freezers, tables and chairs. They wanted, because obviously normal circumstances, you can buy those assets back from your insolvent company and start again. But because the control of goods had been signed over, the HMRC owned those goods. Even though they were still in the premises, okay? Once you've signed the control of goods agreement, it's owned by the HMRC. Now, the director didn't really believe me. So I said, right, let's get on a call with the agent. And we spoke to the HMRC and said, listen, is there any way that these directors can make an offer to buy these assets of the business? Now, some context, they owed over 100 grand to HMRC, but the stuff was worth 10 grand at best. Now, they've offered more to buy that stuff back from HMRC, and the agent quite rightly said, listen, it's going to auction, we're going to come and remove it from the business. By all means, you can tip up at the auction to hopefully buy your stuff back, but the damage has been done. It's all been emptied out of the restaurant. It can no longer trade. So it's super, super important that when you're behind with HMRC, they're using this. They're using this daily now. Now, once your goods are seized, there's a number of outcomes that can follow. I mean, obviously the ideal outcome is you pay them in full. You pay absolutely everything that's owed to HMRC, including enforcement fees, and therefore you can essentially take your goods back. Doesn't happen a lot though. Now, if payment isn't made, the goods are seized and they're sold at public auction. And the proceeds at the auction will be used to settle the debt. Now, the chances are, though, at these auctions, they'll be sold for pennies on the pound. It's highly likely that the sale will not cover the full debt. And HMRC could still come back to you to try and recover that money. Now, listen, the reality is if you're getting your assets taken, you're vastly insolvent, you can no longer trade. You need to be speaking to somebody urgently about what you do here. Please, please, please do not bury your head in the sand on this. It's critically important. Please don't think because the HMRC have now gone away and you've signed this Control the Goods Act that you can actually then move the assets out of the business. That is not going to be allowed. Once you've signed the Control the Goods Act, the HMRC or the creditor who's come with the bailiff, they own your assets. Now, it's fairly crucial to understand what HMRC can and what they can't take. Now, they can seize things like office equipment, vehicles, restaurant equipment, stock, machinery. They can't seize anything that's rented or leased, okay? If you don't own it, they can't seize it. They also can't take tools essential for your trade up to a certain value. They also can't take personal items, right? And they can't take assets that would be damaged if removed incorrectly. Okay, so you've got to be aware of that stuff. Now, when people, the best way here really, the best way to deal with this is to not let it get to that stage, because it's quite hard negotiating with these people when they're on your doorstep. Now, when this happens, it has a huge consequence to your business, and it causes huge disruption. I've seen it where a restaurant, fairly local to me, it happened on a Friday dinner time in a restaurant that was packed. Can you imagine the PR that comes out of the back of that? The reputation is in the toilet, people talk. So really, you've got to get ahead of this. You've got to get ahead of this. You've got to speak to HMRC. And the key thing is early engagement. If your business is facing financial difficulties, you can't pay your VAT, you can't pay your PAYE, you can't pay corporation tax. You've got to you've got to get up to date with it, right? Make sure all your returns are up to date. But then seek advice from someone like me. Or listen, you might not like me, you might not like what I look like, what I sound like, what I dress like, but you've got to speak to somebody. And you can explore things like a time to pay arrangement. Now, just so you know, a time to pay arrangement is where you agree to pay the HMRC over a period of time, okay? Now, generally, they'll give everybody 12 months. If you're a serial offender, like if you get an HMRC time to pay arrangement and then you break it, it's in breach. And therefore, it's highly unlikely they'll give you another one. If they give you 2, you're not going to get 3. Now, there are some steps that you can take to protect the business. Obviously, the first one is stay on top of taxes. Like, literally, I say it time and time again. If you're getting that invoice for £1,000 plus VAT, 200 quid goes in a VAT account. 200 quid goes in a tax account. So you know you've got 800 quid to play in your business. If you do that, you'll never have an issue with HMRC. But, you know, we don't live in an ideal world. And sometimes the problem with HMRC is they don't scream loud. Like literally, I've been there. Listen, I have been there when I was running a business previous to this that ended up into, ended up in insolvency. I was the optimist. You know, oh, things will turn around. It doesn't matter if we spend the VAT money. You know, we'll get ahead next time. I've been where you're at. The problem is if it doesn't go as you want it to, then you're not going to pay the next VAT quarter either. So the key thing, you've got to reach out and you've got to speak to HMRC early. Obviously, understanding your rights, what enforcement agents can and can't do is going to help you. You're probably going to need to speak to somebody like me. If you are behind with HMRC and you have spoken to them and you have failed on a time to pay arrangement in the past, the chances are they're losing faith in you. Like, if you've promised to pay them and you've broken that promise, then you ring them up again, they're going to be like, bloody hell, who's this clown again? But if you get a professional insolvency person to speak to them on your behalf, it might give you a little bit of extra credibility. Now, I touched on a time to pay arrangement. Now, time to pay arrangements, like I said, they are an informal arrangement to pay your taxes over a longer period of time. Now, let's just say that you've got really good compliance, you've always filed on time, you've always paid on time, there's just something that's caused this recent problem. You might be able to negotiate a time to pay arrangement over 2 or 3 years. Like literally, I know that's happened before. But if you don't have a good compliance history, you're constantly late with filings, or you're constantly not paying on in the right time scale, you're probably going to be looking at 12 months. Now, they don't have to give you a time to pay arrangement, but what you've got to understand is, understand your position of power, because in a liquidation, I spoke to someone this morning, and they really don't want to liquidate, and I've said, listen, the key to this is negotiating with HMRC, and they're frightened to death of them. And I've said, well, look at it this way. Why don't you tell them today, I've just spoke to this funny bold chap who said one of my options would be an insolvency, a liquidation. Now, in a liquidation, the HMRC would get nothing because there's very little assets in this business. But they need 2 years to pay it, and they can pay it. Now, hopefully, the HMRC will see commercial sense in this and go, actually, if I wait for 2 years, I'm going to get my money back. If I say no, I'm going to force them into liquidation and they'll get zero. Now, it'll help you when you're speaking to HMRC to have some numbers available, perhaps have a cash flow forecast to share with them, especially if you're looking to get a time to pay arrangement over 2 or 3 years. It might take more than just a conversation with them. Now, remember, when you're in a time to pay arrangement, you've got to keep up to date with your current. So you've got to get your returns on time and pay them on time. So you know that trick I told you about having separate accounts for different tax obligations? If you get a time to pay arrangement, you've got to keep up to date. And the best way to do that is be organised. When money comes in, put it one side for VAT, put it on another side for tax. Now, you might think I'm over-egging it, saying put all the VAT money into one account, because obviously you'll probably be able to claim some VAT back. So speak to your accountant about what the numbers are like, okay, what percentage you need to be putting in there. Now, another option is if a time to pay arrangement has been done, it's been broken, or you may need more than 12 months, 2 years, or 3 years. You could consider a company voluntary arrangement. That's a CVA for short. And what a CVA is where you formally, it's an insolvency process where you agree to pay your creditors over a longer period of time, generally 5 years. And while you're in that CVA, nobody can touch you, okay? But you've got to get 75% of your creditors to agree to the CVA. And it goes back to what I was saying on the time to pay arrangement. In a CVA, it's quite a weighty document. You need an insolvency practitioner to do it. But the key thing is, it's really a story of how, if you accept this CVA, this business will get through. And at the end of it, there's a comparison statement. And it'll say, in a CVA, you will receive this much of your money. In an insolvency liquidation, you'll receive this much of your money. So if you get the right firm to do it, there's a chance that you'll get it accepted. Just be aware, it's not a golden bullet though. Your credit score while in a CVA will be in the toilet. And again, you don't want to... If you've got a bad compliance history with HMRC, you've never paid any tax, and then you go into them with a CVA after 4 years of burying your head in the sand, the chances are they're going to go and tell you to, you know what, okay? So I can't stress to you the importance of acting early, right? The longer you wait, the few options you have. If you receive a notice of enforcement, act immediately. Like literally, pick the phone up to me today. It's not going away, right? Enforcement's going to escalate. If you found the video helpful, right, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. If you write a comment in there, I will respond to them personally. Do not bury your head in the sands with HMRC. They will cause you problems, and if you don't act early, you could lose everything. So I hope you found the video useful. Chris Worden, Director First. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.